And get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I think I've met quite a few of you, but if I haven't had the opportunity yet, I'm Barbara Kampminer. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer of the Office of Public School Construction, and we are the state agency that is administering the Regional K-16 Education Collaboratives Grant Program. Also got a number of folks here from OPSC and then also Foundation for California Community Colleges, which is our third-party administrator. Lisa Silverman here, she's our executive officer, and Alex Nottbaum and Megan McCulloch, who are with the K-16 program, and then Michael, who is assisting the K-16 program and then always does all of our lovely tech when we have these big meetings and manages all that for us. So thank you so much, Michael. But we also have with us another program, and we're very excited about this opportunity to make this contact with the California Student Aid Commission and our K-16 leads. So we're hopeful that this information today is going to be super valuable to K-16 collaboratives. We thought there was a lot of overlap between what you all are trying to accomplish and some of the state programs that are administered through the California Student Aid Commission. And so this is our opportunity to connect the different entities. And I'm going to let Libby run with introducing her folks and her team, and also run us through the agenda. Did want to point out Michael's recording this. It's more of a presentation style today, but there's a lot of room in the agenda at the end so that we can kind of have a conversation about how this applies to each of your collaboratives. And then also maybe Libby, once you've had a chance to introduce your team, if we could get some. I'm seeing everybody's been adding their locations. That's been helpful, but if we could maybe find out just which regions we have here, and that will help Student Aid Commission kind of know who they are talking to today. So Libby, I'm going to pass it over to you first, though.
Great, thank you so much. And really want to thank Barbara and our colleagues at the Department of General Services for hosting today. Really appreciate this opportunity to talk to everybody. Really quickly, I'll go over our agenda for today. We're going to talk about 3 of the Commission's programs. So we'll be talking about the All-In FAFSA and CADAA campaign, and that'll be Salvador presenting that. We also have a Golden State Teacher Grant Program that we'll be talking about. And I'll go ahead and put all of these links into the chat so that everyone can see the websites as we're talking about the programs. And lastly, we'll be talking about the Learning Aligned Employment Program, which is Judy Jaramel and I are the analysts for that program. So we'll each be presenting on each of our programs. And then lastly, we set aside some time. We hope we can talk about how these programs can be applied toward the goals of the K through 16 collaboratives, because it looks like we have a lot of overlapping goals. So really want to make sure we're all on the same page and we all know about what each of us are doing. And I think Barbara had a good idea for us to maybe just have a second to talk about which collaboratives are here, which regions are here. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. So I'm not sure if we want to just have a representative from each of the regions introduce the collaborative.
Barking dog here. Carrie, you're first on my screen. Do you want to quickly?
I'm Carrie Hammerstrom, and representing the Central San Joaquin Valley K-16 Partnership and the Fresno Madera K-16 Collaborative. And then on behalf of Tulare Kings College and Career Collaborative too.
I can say hello from the Border Region. I'm Sally Cox with the Border Region Inclusive Talent Pipeline Initiative, and nice to see everybody.
Hi, I'm Annie Sterling. I am here representing the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. I'm with Capital Impact. We're a social impact consulting firm in Sacramento that are involved in the project management aspects of our collaborative.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chrissy Cherry, and I'm from the Orange County region, and I'm representing the OC Pathways Collaborative.
Hi, everybody. I'm Krista Herrera, and I'm here representing Kern's K-16 Regional Education Collaborative.
Hi, everyone. I'm James Crandall. I'm with North State Together at Shasta College, representing the K-16 Collaborative up at far Northern California.
Hi, I'm Patrice Richter with the Kern County Regional Education Collaborative.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who we didn't hear from yet? All right. And I forgot to mention that I think we'll introduce ourselves as we're presenting. I think that's what we discussed. So again, I'm Libby Rafferty, but I'll be presenting later. So I'll go ahead and turn it over unless anyone, so does anyone have any questions before we get started with the presentations? Otherwise we'll go all in.
Libby, just real quick, I mentioned Foundation CCC, and I actually see a number of folks on here. Do you all want to just do a quick wave? We've got Jody, I saw Cesar, Amy, I think I saw your name on here as well. So we've got a couple of representatives from the Foundation for California Community Colleges. Maybe just putting some names together for who else we have out here in the audience as well. So they're watching as well, so that we can kind of keep this information going as we're working throughout the years on these various initiatives. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All righty. Okay, and then so we started at 9. We're aiming to finish at 10:30. So there's a 90-minute meeting. And so I'll go ahead and hand it over to Salvador, who's going to talk about the all-in FAFSA CADAA. So over to you, Sal.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. I wanted to share a few thoughts about, or a few comments regarding my background. I have a 40-year career in service of private and public. I spent 26 years lobbying the legislature on behalf of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, California School Boards Association, and my last lobbying position was with the Association of California Administrators. All three of these organizations, as you must know, are very active in K-12 education. And I was fortunate enough to, at the end of my career, be asked by the executive director of the Student Aid Commission to join them because of my relationships with school superintendents. They play a significant role, and probably for the first time will play an in-depth role in student aid. As you know, counselors have had this on their backs for all the years it appears. And we want to shift that attention to the school district leadership, including the school boards. There is a new law, but more importantly, I think it's just in the better interests of our students to have the leadership of the school districts actively engaged. And so I'm excited about what it is we're doing with the All In campaign. Just a few comments about my personal views about financial aid. I can tell you that without it, my wife and I would have not been able to obtain a college education. What's more importantly for me to say is that as a result of that and our ability to get to the level of an economic standing where we didn't need our children to apply, was just a great accomplishment, I think, for student aid. That, in other words, from one generation to the next, we were able to get them through college without needing these resources. And so it's just one example of the impact that financial aid has on students in this state. So having said that, we could go ahead and start the slide presentation. The academic year of 22-23 is going to be a very different year from the past. And the reason why is there's a new law, and the law now requires, it's not an option, for high schools, continuation schools, also charter schools, which are not on here, but they're also included, that will ensure that all seniors complete these two financial aid applications, FAFSA and the California DREAM Act, unless, of course, the student is 18 years of age and older, they can make that decision, or unless the student via an opt-out form signs and says, I'm not interested. Well, our hope is that that number of students doesn't override the number of students that actually apply. We think with our campaign, we're going to get very involved. And I think a lot of districts, students, parents are going to recognize that there are resources available for them. It's unfortunate that, it appears that $500 million gets untapped for our students. And it's just not right that that money sits there when there's tremendous opportunity. So the goal of all in, again, it's for the first time to really expand our reach and move on to other segments of the school districts at the leadership role. And that's very, very important because now there's a new law, and you could be assured that there's going to be reporting at the end of the year. And it's not going to be nice for districts, or I should say it's going to be challenging for districts whose opt-out numbers grow instead of declined. And it's not by us, but it's going to be from community organizations and certainly the legislature. We don't want to see any more additional restrictions on the leadership of schools, so we got to support them, but this will be on the back of their minds, no doubt. Can move on to the next slide. So what does it encompass? It encompasses all of these various programs that are funding streams for our students, for our graduating seniors. And that, of course, is financial aid in general, state aid, institutional aid, and loans. As you can imagine, all these programs have very unique criteria, and it's important that they're familiar with all of them. It's important that all of those individuals impacted are aware of these options and that they don't sit back and not participate in applying. It's extremely important. And that means giving them the information so they know what may best be for them. Again, it provides us access of options to families, to students. Many of you, I'm sure, have examples of families whose decision is made early on that their child may not be of college, standing. Well, one of the things that is great about this effort is that it reminds them that it's just not about college as we know it. It's also about careers. It's about careers that are in the various areas that may lead to very successful professions. I spent 6 years working for an architectural firm. And during that time, I couldn't tell you how challenging it was for the construction part of projects to have limited access to electricians, welders, carpenters. All that entire area of the economy is now impacted. And so for families to know that there's money for their students, their children to be able to access these additional careers, I think it's going to be very exciting. Again, it empowers, those communities, those students' decisions to pursue learning after high school, and doing that in a way where it's not only extremely positive for them individually, but it's going to be a good investment in the long run for all of us. Moving on. So we're going to talk a little bit about, the application and completing it and why it's so important that they now be required to make a decision about completing FAFSA or CADAA. So the next slide. As I mentioned, the opportunity for the student to be able to apply and learn about what's available to them. One of the things that I think is important to point out is that as a student fills out these applications, they learn about the results of their eligibility within 72 hours. So there's no time delay. And so the sooner a student submits these applications, they don't need to wait very long. And I think that helps them in making decisions prior to receiving, their diploma. And I think that's important. Government always gets viewed as a body that lags in giving results. And this is not true, and especially not in this particular case. Apologize, let me close my window. I can assure you that was not my vehicle. The other major element of this effort is the issue of equity. Equity about changing the demographics of our career, college ready individuals. We have large populations of students that are of color, many of them who are bilingual, many of them that are potentially first generations. Many of you may come from those households where your parents may have not even graduated high school. This provides a change, opportunity for change, and equity in this state is extremely, extremely important for the overall success, and we should embrace it. This will, as I mentioned to you personally, I know for a fact that this will increase the earning potential of that individual. My parents never graduated high school. There's no way that my parents could have ever earned the income that I and my spouse have earned. And it all became possible because of higher education. It would not have happened otherwise. Clearly, we could have chosen the career path of a particular trade, but we had a lot of influence from our teachers, from our counselors, from our relatives, that we had the potential, and our teachers, that we had the potential to achieve a higher education. Let's not forget counselors. The dynamic with counselors today, or the challenge with counselors today, is the amount of students they're responsible for. And I don't know if you know this, but it could be the 400 to 500 students that a high school counselor is assigned. And it's just not right that they have to have that number of students under their wings, and it just doesn't make sense. Therefore, including the superintendent of a school district and the school board, we can find ways to better assist that counselor in doing their work and expand the opportunity for others to help. We can move on. Back to the return on investment. This is so important. It has to continue to be at the forefront of this conversation. Government programs, sometime in the public opinion polls, don't make it evident that they have a great return on investment. As you can see here, for $4.50 for every $1 of investment is you can't turn your back on that. It's extremely important when you have a state whose services rely quite a bit on taxes, and so the more you make, unfortunately, the more you pay, but you have that capacity to actually provide in a return for the investment you received. That gets to the second point, which is the college graduate's income, the amount of opportunity that will no doubt exist. You may be familiar that here in Sacramento, now we're talking about a portion of the Intel Corporation putting up the facility. They're going to be in dire need of engineers, and one can be assured that Their salaries will certainly be over six figures. What a great opportunity to live in such a great city that's expanding, but also to have great careers, and it's going to be good for all. We need skilled workers. As I mentioned, we're in dire need in the state's overall growth. Although you may see more development of housing projects, there's still a significant shortage of carpenters, electricians, welders. There's going to be a continuing level of need because of the amount of retirement and because we haven't placed enough attention in these areas. When I was lobbying for the School Boards Association, for the School Administrators Association, I can't tell you how many, especially in the Central Valley school districts, were taking back their focus on, or putting back their focus on, career tech nursing programs in their high schools, continuing to expand the agricultural aspect of need, which is, the ability to be strong agricultural providers and all the services that agriculture provides. All of those things, I think, are going to be clearly impacted positively if we can do our best to have many students, more students, apply and participate in the higher education that they may not otherwise be able to obtain because of their financial situation. So I hope that the All In campaign grasp the attention across the state. I can assure you that the leadership of the Student Aid Commission will be out speaking, will be out promoting, will do everything possible to, starting October 1st or before actually, that there is attention given to this new effort, and done in a way where it's about providing support. This new law shouldn't be viewed as placing additional burdens on school districts. It should be viewed as providing more opportunity. And we certainly, and I personally can tell you that it's not easy for a state agency to come into a local school district and again put an additional task on them. What we're doing is saying we're going to support you in an additional opportunity. I believe that we're going to have tremendous impact, and we'll have a positive outcome at the end of next cycle. We certainly are available to share that kind of data, and I'm hopeful that agencies of state government will join us in this effort. Next slide. So I mentioned that my experience in the K-12 arena is a primary reason why I've had the opportunity after retirement to come back. And I wouldn't come back if it wasn't for a program that had a direct positive effect on me personally and my family. It's an attempt to now focus on the district superintendent. The superintendent has a tremendous amount of responsibility. I don't know if you have relationships, personal or maybe even be related to superintendents. There's 1,000 school districts, 1,000 superintendents. They're in small Northern California, Central Valley, to very large districts, Sacramento. When I first arrived in Elk Grove 30 years ago, the school district had 20,000 students. It has over 65,000 students now. The role of the superintendent has become more and more challenging. The expectations have grown and the student population has changed. There's tremendous amount of pressure. We all not really sure how COVID in the long run will affect it. We know it's had a huge impact and has made changes to it. But again, this all-out campaign is to really focus on leadership of the schools and not forget the fact that there are others, classroom teachers, counselors, for that matter, even the maintenance people in our schools that will continue to participate, and we want to help them. one of those first steps that a school district can do to show their commitment is to pass a resolution supporting this all-in campaign. It's letting their community know that they're behind their superintendent and school leaders, their principals. They want to support them. And it sends a pretty strong message to the community that the school board is ready to work. And again, you know, when a community is doing a lot of things to provide focus on post-high school activity, the community colleges, the universities are in their backyards, and it's a great place for students to get their start, especially in the community colleges and the amount of support and resources they're providing. That's why, you know, you're going to hear us talk about K-12, but our relationships with many of you here that are in the community college arena, I think it's important to work together. It expands, obviously, we think it expands the number of statewide organizations at all levels, whether it's social justice, whether it's career tech organizations, labor unions. A lot of potential organizations are out there. Many of them exist today, but I think that pool will expand. From the commission standpoint, we're clearly showing leadership from the top down. Our president of the commission is an employee of the Riverside County Office of Education, and Chairwoman Cifuentes has proven that she and her local community believes in this effort, has made tremendous success with her local districts. The entire commission is now, it seems to be shifting its focus on doing everything it can to help the K-12 community. Not to say that they've never have, but there has been a focus over the years on the post-secondary education groups. And so now it's really trying its best to do more with the K-12 specifically. The use of all forms of media, you know, we certainly have a lot of focus on media, and you're going to hear some more of that, I believe, from Michael. And I think that that's going to prove how much we're ready to change the way we communicate and provide information across the state. So lastly, from my perspective, and then I'm going to have Michael talk more about the continuing efforts in this arena, is that, you know, the FAFSA, California Dream Act. Actually, Michael, I think it's important maybe that you just start on this slide, since it gets into the area that you have the expertise on what our efforts will be.
Yeah, sure. Happy to jump in. Well, thank you, Sal. And hello, everyone, and good morning. My name is Michael Lemus, and I'm the Outreach and Marketing Manager here at the Commission. So as Sal mentioned, you know, this is a really huge task, especially on those educators themselves that are on the ground helping their students and families every day. So with that being said, we decided to take more of the proactive approach to really develop a series of resources that they can go ahead and access, not just the educators themselves, but students, families, community-based organizations, folks like you all, if you want to go ahead and engage in this work. There's a lot of different resources out there. So I'll close out this presentation here by just sharing some of those. So as far as where we're trying to centralize all the documents, all the resources, we do have a landing page. I did throw that in the chat. It's at csac.ca.gov/all-in. It's a living web page, which means that we're continuously adding more to it. But right now, there are student and family resources, as well as resources for those that are at the educator level. So again, we're trying to centralize that on the landing page so folks don't have to go out looking for a whole bunch of different things on different web pages. The other is that CSAC has and will continue to have a series of workshops, trainings for folks that want to get more engaged in this work. So the training team here at CSAC has something called the annual statewide financial aid workshops. Some of you may have actually attended those in the past, but they're half-day trainings that provide a high-level overview of the FAFSA, the California Dream Act application, any sort of updates that we have gotten through legislation, for example, that pertain to financial aid, and just some really good resources. And that's a half-day workshop that exists. And those are now also in person, so they're not just online. We also have presentations like this that we can deliver at different organizations or conferences. We have Cash for College workshops. And if you're not familiar with Cash for College, it's one of our largest, if not the largest outreach program coming out of the commission. And essentially it's workshops dedicated to helping students and families complete their FAFSA or California Dream Act application. Something that we launched during the pandemic, which I'll throw in the link here because this actually may directly apply to you all, is something called the Train the Trainer program. So we developed an official certification out of CSAC, basically to help people get trained to be able to actually host their own Cash for College workshops. Our idea is, of course, we're a small but mighty agency, so we only have so many staff. And at the educator level, there's also only so many people that can help out at the schools. So we're taking the approach of training people to go ahead and host, again, their own workshops where you don't necessarily need to be an educator or a CSAC staff member to go ahead and actually host these, as long as you actually have the training that is officially given to us or given to you all by CSAC. In addition to that, we have our local regional partners, so our Cash for College regional coordinating organizations that can assist in hosting some of these workshops and collaborating. I love that this entire group is about collaboration. Our CalSOAPs as well. It's another outreach program. There's 16 locations across the state that also pour their efforts into financial aid literacy and financial aid training, all of which can work with groups like yours to go ahead and further do outreach around this campaign, but also just getting students to complete their applications. There's also data available on our website, and we will have and will continue to have various marketing materials such as flyers, postcards, social media graphics. We're developing educator toolkits that are actually going to be mailed to schools. They'll receive those with resources inside. So again, our idea is to be proactive because we know that the schools are already extremely busy with a lot of challenges. We don't want this to be seen as, oh, here's another requirement that we need to take on. Instead, it's a true opportunity that CSAC is also going to be assisting with. So Libby, if you can take us to the next slide. We're actually at the tail end here. So as far as just collaboration, again, thank you all for the invitation here. We really want this to be an ongoing conversation about how we bring different groups together to actually help in this requirement. So that's school administrators, teachers, student leaders, community-based organizations, the CSAC entities being the regional coordinating organizations for Cash for College, the CalSOAPs, the colleges themselves, parent organizations. We truly mean all in when we're actually talking about this campaign. It's more than just a slogan. We really want people to be involved from all levels and making sure that they're able to go ahead and help out with those efforts. The other is just getting the conversation started. So a lot of people out there still don't know that this is actually a thing. And so if you do hear, or you're just actually talking to anyone that has to do with high school seniors, it's really important that they're actually aware of this and that they know this is coming their way because it is in legislation. It's a true thing already, but that CSAC can go ahead and assist and help out with those resources. And Libby, I think there's one more slide if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so data, a lot of folks don't know about this, but if you go to csac.ca.gov/data, you can actually look at the numbers by high school across the board. You can look at districts, you can look at counties, you can look by segment. So for example, if you're wanting to look at the CSU or the community college or however they're doing, you can even compare year over year data to go ahead and actually see how these schools are doing. This is going to be really important with this actual all-in campaign because we'll be able to see all of the high schools and their FAFSA CADAA completion rates. That's going to be really important that those numbers are being tracked. One, so that we can assist, of course, those that may be experiencing challenges, but also naturally people are going to be curious. So we do have a data dashboard to be able to look at. That I think is fairly up to date. I think it's maybe a couple of days behind from the date that you actually look at it, but it's still pretty up to date. And then Libby, I think, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So the last piece here is, this is a QR code. So if you have your device, feel free to go ahead and take that out and take a picture. If not, you already have the actual link in the chat. But as I said, we're all in for this campaign. That is the name of our campaign. And you can check out our landing page and our social platforms for various resources and marketing materials on our all-in campaign, Cash for College, or social media toolkits. We've been working really hard to develop a lot of different resources in a variety of different methods. And so we're hopeful that this will help out organizations like yours, but also those that you assist. And I think that is it, if I'm not mistaken, Libby. Thank you for sharing screen. We'll open it up for questions before we loop into the Golden State Teacher Grant, which is a much shorter presentation.
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. I have a question about for students whose parents don't qualify for Cal Grants and Pell Grants and mostly are getting loans, and where the parent has to take out a Parent Plus loan. How is forcing a student to do that beneficial to them when they might come out of school? Like, I just had a student who graduated from UCLA and her loan is over $1,000. She has to pay a loan of over $1,000 a month. She didn't qualify because her parents made too much money. She didn't qualify for any of the grants and had to really work to go and get other scholarships to supplement because she didn't want to take out a whole bunch of loans.
Absolutely. And as someone that is still paying off their loans, I greatly
Right.
appreciate you bringing that up. So yeah, that's a really, really important point to bring up. The other thing that I think Sal touched on briefly is that there is an opt-out process. We're not encouraging people to do that just because, of course, if people, see that as the easy way out, they may go that way instead of looking into the financial aid process. However, to your point, Catherine, if there are folks, because there are going to be some, unfortunately, that do not qualify for any sort of aid through the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act, we don't want to put them in an awkward situation either. So there is that formal opt-out process if folks are like, you know what, I know I'm not going to qualify, or I know for a fact that I'm not going to pursue a higher education, whatever that reason may be, or maybe they're going off to the military. There is a formal opt-out form that they can go ahead and actually fill out. That opt-out form, should they choose to change their mind, for example, maybe 6 months down the line, they're like, actually, I do want to go to a community college and get a certificate. That doesn't actually bar them from actually applying for financial aid. It's just for the purposes of this requirement that they could either apply or actually do the formal opt-out process. I do want to just say one other thing on loans, because this is a really big conversation at this point. We try our best, in our training and our workshops, to let students know that, yes, loans are an option, but of course, to be careful about what they're actually accepting, because as someone that also took advantage of loans when I had, when I couldn't cover, even with all the financial aid that I got, I still had more expenses. I didn't understand until way later, which is the case for a lot of people, what the interest really means and how that builds up over the years. And so that's really important, especially for those first generation students that have no idea what they're getting themselves into. We try our best in our own trainings and our own workshops to make sure that if they are going to actually look into getting loans, that is a form of financial aid, that they at least look into and have those conversations with the schools, for example, if they're getting a federal loan, and making sure that they're aware of what they're getting themselves into. But there is that opt-out process. And in addition, I think it's around financial education and literacy, some of which we provide, but also community-based organizations. I know literally that's their mission, is to talk about these things.
Can I piggyback on that? I think earlier in the presentation, there was something about is there a requirement for the districts to get a certain number of students to complete the?
No, that's a great question. From what I understand, and Salvador, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, the requirement is just for the actual LEAs or the schools, in this case, to just verify that their students have completed. They're not supposed to necessarily hit a specific number or anything like that. They just need to verify that the high school senior has completed a FAFSA or a CADAA or has formally opted out through that form. But there's no number necessarily that they are required to hit.
And if I may just add, I think that was actually a surprise for me, considering when the legislature gets involved, they immediately, while they tell you you have an opportunity to do something positive here, oh, by the way, if you don't meet this particular mark, we're going to punish you. And I think that was something that was very positive from this piece of legislation. But you can be sure, since there's going to be a lot of data available over the years, that they'll be watching that. And I hope they don't get to the point where they say, if you're at a 3% opt out, you can't go above 4. And I think that that's going to be something that we're going to try our best to prove to the legislature, because ultimately they're going to be keeping an eye on this, that we're making progress. And you just can't simply punish a district whose efforts have not reached the level that a particular legislative elected official thinks they ought to be at. So we're going to work with everyone involved, no doubt, to keep us from ever getting to that point. But data will be available. And I think that's one of the things that's important here is that this is not something anyone's trying to hide. It's all there. And we'll be able to, there'll be a lot of eyes on that information at the end of the cycle.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions, but if there are any sort of follow-up questions that you do all have, please feel free to reach out to us at the commission. We want this to be an ongoing conversation and a true collaboration. And so again, if you also know of any organizations that we should be connecting to, please let us know. And I do want to just set it in the chat to Amy's point. We have also heard of the same where a lot of folks, even scholarships sometimes require for students to actually submit a FAFSA or a California Dream Act application for other forms of aid that may not actually even be given through a FAFSA or a CADAA. So that's also important because the way that we see it is this is an opportunity for students. Yes, you know, it takes some time to complete. A student may be annoyed that they have to do this, but it really can be a game changer. And a lot of people, unfortunately, out there simply do not know that they can even get any sort of financial aid and automatically roll themselves out for any sort of higher education. And so for us, we really are hopeful that this is going to be a really huge change, a good change for the state of California. We're also one of, I think, 7 states in the entire country that even have a requirement like this in legislation. So we're hopeful and we will see what the numbers look like in the next couple of months into the next year. But with that, Libby, I know that we have one other quick presentation, at least from my end. And I'm actually just going to just share screen. This is only going to take a couple of minutes, but it's on the Golden State Teacher Grant Program. And let me get myself queued up here. And let's get this going. And if I can get a confirmation, I can see the little boxes of faces. So if I see a head nod, okay, thanks, Libby. So I'm talking about the Golden State Teacher Grant Program. I'm gonna spend a couple of minutes just talking about this and then open it up for any sort of questions. But we're really excited about this. If you haven't heard about the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, it's been around for a while, but there's been some new expansions to the program that we're really excited about. At a high level, the Golden State Teacher Grant Program awards actually up to $20,000 to students currently enrolled in a professional preparation program. And these professional preparation programs actually used to only be in education, specifically for teachers. Most recently, due to some budgetary changes and expansions, this now also applies to school social workers, school counselors, school psychologists, child welfare, and attendance officials. So folks out there really working with the youth. And this is really exciting because we also know that there is a shortage with teachers. We're seeing a shortage with psychologists, those in mental health. And so the state is really investing money into helping, hopefully, these folks that want to become teachers, that are in these fields, that are in counseling, for example, to feel like they're being invested in. And so this program does award up to $20,000 for folks that are in those professional preparation programs. And those programs have to be approved by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and they need to be working on earning that preliminary teaching or pupil personal services credential. So it does need to be a program in which they're credentialed in. They do have time to actually complete this process, as you can see here. So students must complete their program and obtain their credential within 3 years from the first distribution of the actual funds, and commit to work at a priority school. And all of those links as far as what's a priority school or an approved program, you can find on our website, which I will share in the chat. But they will have to commit to work at a priority school in California for 4 years within 8 years of completing their program. So folks that you may be in contact with may be asking, this sounds really cool, $20,000 is a lot. Am I actually eligible? This is our trifold, which I'm happy to go ahead and share as well, but our trifold makes it really easy to understand what the service obligation is, what exactly is a priority school. But I do want to just cover eligibility really quickly. So you must meet the following eligibility criteria to apply for the Golden State Teacher Grant Program. So as I mentioned earlier, be currently enrolled in or applied for enrollment in a California-based professional preparation program approved by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, maintaining things like good academic standing. There's an update on a list of eligible schools, be working towards your preliminary teaching or pupil personnel services credential. And this is important. Again, going back to why applying for a FAFSA or CADAA is so important, a lot of programs, including some of our own, require that a student submits a free application for federal student aid or California Dream Act application. For the purposes of this program, all they need to do is actually submit that FAFSA or CADAA and then submit a GSTG application. So many of our programs that are outside of the FAFSA CADAA have their own application sites, and then those can all be found again on our website. The last thing I want to share, and then I'll open it up for any sort of questions, is our toolkit area. So we developed, in case people want to share the news about this really awesome program, and we developed a social media toolkit where you can actually download graphics. You can download graphics for social media. It's very easy to go ahead and understand just at a high level what we're actually talking about with this program. But we've also added in that flyer and that trifold brochure that I just showed you. And then if you're wanting to amplify efforts on this on social media, there's sample captions. So we've literally created all of this stuff so that if you literally want to copy and paste, download images, not have to think about all the captions, you can literally just use our social media toolkit. We are in the process of updating some of this information as far as the sample captions to just expand beyond what we typically talk about, in partnership with CDE, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and other organizations. So I'm gonna stop there because that was a lot of information that we just gave you, and we'll go ahead and open it up if there are any sort of questions here. And I think there's some stuff in the chat that I'll catch up on as well. Thanks, Libby. And I'll throw in the toolkit link as well so that you all have access to that. But any questions or initial thoughts?
I have a question. If you
Absolutely.
start teaching at a school on the list and then the school goes off the list, do you have to switch schools?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I don't have the answer, but Libby, I don't know if you would either. We were hoping that we were going to get one of the lead analysts on here, but I think there was a scheduling conflict. But Sal or Libby, by chance, do you know?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would have to check in, with the Golden State teacher team, and I can get back to you, Patrice, right? Or
Yeah.
I can maybe I'll give a follow-up to Barbara, and we can send it out to everybody.
Thanks, Libby.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you.
I think that's probably something that hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, I don't
Good
think so.
good question. Yeah.
How are priority schools determined? And do the person who's doing it pick the school? You know, like the person who has the grant, they choose the school that they want to apply to?
My understanding is, yes, they choose a school, but as far as how the schools are put on that list of approved, I do see that it's by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, but I don't know the specifics associated with how they actually get selected. So that may be another one, Libby, that we also get that information on. But other than that, I think the big thing that we're just hoping folks like you all can help us in is just amplifying these efforts. People are really, really wanting, of course, that additional assistance to pursue their education. You know, we're one of, probably a few states that even has, this amount of aid for teachers, those that are in mental health. And we really, really are utilizing these types of resources, these toolkits, to make sure that we're able to go ahead and just amplify the outreach, associated with these programs, but hopefully for the students themselves, that they also see this as, oh, hey, I didn't even know this existed. Let me go ahead and apply. We try to make it as easy as possible for them to also access these funds. Thank you, Annie. Okay, well, Libby, that's all I had on GSTG. So thank you all. And I think Libby is up next, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. Annie, you beat me to it. I was just about to post that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and Barbara actually found the answer to the other question in our FAQs. So you're grandfathered in if your school is removed from the list. So to answer Catherine's question from earlier, if your school was on the list when you started, then you're grandfathered in. You don't have to change schools if your school is subsequently taken off.
Thank you.
Good questions. And that's a good way to get everyone to look at the website. We don't know the answers, but they're on the website. Okay, I'll go ahead and share screen, and this is our last program that we're going to talk about, and then we'll kind of open it up to a general conversation about how all of these programs could be maybe used in relation to the goals of your specific K-16 collaborative. Up next, we're going to talk about the Learning Aligned Employment Program, which is basically a new and improved work study program for college students. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. I think Judy, you can go ahead and start off. Oh, but let me introduce myself. I'm Libby Rafferty. I'm one of the analysts and program coordinators for the Learning Aligned Employment Program, which is new for this year. So it's just a totally new program. And I will kick it over to Judy, the other analyst, to start us off.
Hi, good morning, everybody. As Libby said, I'm Judy Jaramel, and I'm one of the program coordinators for the Learning Aligned Employment Program. Before we get started, I just want to point you to the bottom of this slide where you can see our website, www.csac.ca.gov/LAEP, L-A-E-P. We have a lot of resources there, FAQs, handbooks, a recorded webinar, so lots of good information that you might find useful. And then also our email, LAEP, L-A-E-P, @csac.ca.gov. We would encourage you to reach out with questions, comments, ideas. Everything is welcome. All right. So the Learning Aligned Employment Program, or LAEP, offers eligible underrepresented students at public colleges and universities the opportunity to earn some money to help reduce their educational costs, while at the same time getting education-aligned, career-related work experience. The California Student Aid Commission is responsible for developing the program guidelines and supporting campuses as they roll out LAEP for the 2022-23 academic year. Today, we'll talk a little bit about background, eligibility for institutions, for students, for employers, and then we'll have a few LAEP updates, and then we'll be happy to take any questions that anybody has. So as Libby said, the Learning Aligned Employment Program is basically a new and improved work study program for the state of California. It makes higher education a little more affordable. It promotes equity. It better aligns higher education with the needs of the workforce today, and it helps students bridge the gap between college and a career. The program was open to all public colleges and universities, so the University of California, California State Universities, and the California Community Colleges. In order to participate, each institution needs to sign an agreement with the commission. And we're really happy to say that over 90% of the eligible schools have elected to participate in this program. Funded over two budget cycles, LAEP was allocated $500 million in state funds. Funds were allocated to institutions prorated based on their share of students receiving a federal Pell Grant. We actually paid out 100% of the funds this year in August. This is actually a 9-year program, but we paid all of the money up front, and the funds will just roll over each year to the participating campuses until June 30th, 2031. And of that money that we rolled out, 5% of the funds can be used by schools for the administrative costs of getting the program running. And then just a quick look at the numbers, you can see that we have 100% participation from the UCs and the CSUs and almost all of the community colleges. And in terms of where those money is going, you can see on the right-hand side here, over half of the dollars are going into our community colleges. And now I'll turn it over to Libby for student eligibility.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and pause here for some questions if anyone has questions. This is our best slide that we have charts on. Our PowerPoint is not as nice as Sal's, and And Michael's a little less high tech. Any questions before we move on to student eligibility? All righty, I will go ahead and move on. So which students are eligible for this? Oh, sorry, Jenny. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, what office within the CSUs would be holding this money?
Great question. We let the institutions decide. So I can connect you with the CSU Long Beach Learning Aligned Employment Program Coordinator.
Okay.
That's the person that's our point of contact. And
Okay.
that person might be able to let you know where those funds are being held.
Okay.
But we sent them to the EFT coordinator. So the checks are with whoever is listed as the EFT coordinator for like Cal Grant.
Okay.
Which is the program. So we already had all the contact info for that person.
Okay.
So if you shoot us an email at lape@csac.ca.gov, I can connect you with the program coordinator on your campus.
All right, super. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions before we move on?
So it's starting this academic year. So are students seeing that on their eFans?
So we just opened up this program. So we sent out the funds to institutions about a month ago, well, maybe like two or 3 weeks ago. And so this is new. And so we've set everything up at the commission. We have a work group that's helped us to kind of check in with institutions as we're setting things up. But now we've sort of handed this program over to institutions. So I think that most institutions are looking at a spring start in terms of marketing to students. Because things are kind of going through approval processes. There's a few institutions that I've talked to who are starting this fall, just the early adopters, but I would say 90% of the schools that are participating won't be really marketing this to students until the spring because they're still getting things approved.
And one more question, and this is in addition to the already existing work study. So now there's two pools of money for work study?
So work study is currently, so federal work study is a federal program. There was no state funded work study until,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so this is
Okay.
state funded work study. But
Okay.
students can do both. So that's a good question. Students can do both programs depending on, the student's workload. So we're really, one sort of overarching theme for this program is that it's new, it's kind of an experiment, and we're really trying to keep things open to allow institutions just kind of get out of their way and let institutions tell us what works. And so for this program, we're really like leaving it open to schools to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. All right, I'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, but let me know if you have questions. So for student eligibility, as Judy mentioned, one of the goals of this program is equity. So for this program, students need to be from an underrepresented background, which I'll discuss a little bit more on the next slide what that means. But the general eligibility for the program is that it is restricted to students who are at least enrolled half-time. So they need to be enrolled at least half-time, except in the summer. So in the summer, students can actually take the summer off from school and still participate as long as they're enrolled at least half-time for the fall. So happy to go into more detail about that if anyone has questions, but essentially students need to be enrolled half-time. They need to be California residents or meet the resident exemptions if they're students who are undocumented. Students need to maintain satisfactory academic progress as defined by the institution. They have to demonstrate financial need. And students need to be eligible to work in the US. And for students who are undocumented, that means that the student would generally need to have DACA work authorization to participate in this program. So it is open to undocumented students, but restricted to undocumented students who are eligible to work in the US. All righty, I will move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about underrepresented. I will not read through this list. As you can see, it's very long. And part of the reason for that is that the statute for this program requires that students are underrepresented, but there was no definition. So we tried to make it as broad as possible to allow as many students as possible to participate. One that I will point out, though, is that low-income students are considered underrepresented for this program. And so students who financially qualify and who are low income, that would kind of serve two purposes for qualifying the student for this program. All right, and I'll go one more slide and then I'll stop for questions. This program also requires institutions to prioritize students from 3 priority groups, including first-gen, foster youth, and students who are homeless or at risk of being homeless. Those students must be prioritized for participation in this program. And basically what that means is that the institution needs to make this program open to students who meet those qualifications. So I can talk a little bit more about how prioritization works. This year, I don't think that's going to be much of an issue because, as Judy mentioned, we sent out all of the funds to institutions. So there's an unlimited, basically, amount of funds at institutions this year. But I think this could come up a little bit more as the funds get drawn down toward the end of the program. Further prioritization is for students in a STEM discipline. So trying to promote those STEM opportunities for students. So further prioritization for those in a STEM discipline. Any questions about student prioritization or student eligibility for this program? And again, I can connect you, if you're on a campus, I can connect you with the Learning Aligned Employment Program Coordinator. Each participating campus has one, and they can tell you a little bit more about maybe in general how this is getting rolled out on your campus. All right, and you may have noticed that this program requires a lot of cross collaboration on each campus. So up until now, we've really been working with financial aid offices, like almost completely with financial aid offices, but this program is kind of exciting because we're getting to work with career centers, with career technical education programs. Kind of similar to the K-16 collaboratives, this program requires that we're working with, everybody's sort of on the same page. So that's exciting for me. A couple notes about the administration of this program on campuses. The maximum number of hours and the maximum compensation for each student are set by the institution. So you can set it different for different students, for example. So maybe if you have a full-time student, their maximum hours would be less than a student who is only working taking half-time classes, for example. So that's set by the institution. Institutions are strongly encouraged, but not required, to consider offering academic credit to students who participate. So that's, again, getting students to graduation, kind of removing barriers to graduation for students, and also giving them that experience that would help them launch their career once they graduate. Institutions will be required to report data on LEAP funds. So if you are familiar with our current programs like Cal Grant, you probably are familiar with web grants. And so you'll be required to, each institution will be required to report data in web grants for the students served, just like with any other program. And lastly, half-time enrollment is defined by the institution. So we get that question a lot. Half-time enrollment, it's just the same as whatever you're using for your half-time enrollment already. So again, the institution has the authority to determine that. All right, let's move on to talking about employers. So employers for this program, there are 3 types of employers that are eligible to employ students for this program. So the first one is basically the institutions themselves. So research centers or institutions themselves. Again, that includes the UC, CSU, and 97% of community colleges. if the position provides the student with a direct opportunity to participate in research. So if the student is in an on-campus job, they need to be have an opportunity to participate in research. And so again, this is a new and improved work study, and someone brought up the current federal work study program. One of the differences with this program and federal work study is that we're a little more strict on that. This needs to be aligned with the students' career goals, and they need to be, if they're working on campus, they need to be participating in research or doing some kind of, career related activity. This is really trying to get away from students working on campus in like the food court or, jobs that aren't really aligned with the students' career goals. So students can work on campus, but it needs to be related to research, and that's 100% of those positions on campus. It must be giving the student an opportunity to participate in research. The next type of eligible employer is public schools. So that includes preschool through 12th grade, operated by a school district. So it has to be a public school, and it needs to be operated by one of the entities listed there. So one note on this is that the student needs to work at the school. They can't work at the school district, for example. So the student needs to be working at a public school operated by one of those entities. And then I'll go through the last bullet and I'll pause for questions. The last type of employer that's eligible for this program is basically any organization or corporation that is, so that could be nonprofit, that could be a for-profit company, as long as it's non-sectarian, so non-religious and non-political. So any of those businesses, and we've talked to quite a few businesses that are interested in participating in this program and hiring students. As long as this, again, is going to be a kind of a launch pad for the student's career. So the employer has to either be capable of providing the student with a job or capable of connecting the student with a full-time job after graduation. They're not required to hire the student or help the student find a job. They just have to be capable of that. So again, sort of a check to make sure that this is in the student's best interest and going to help the student find a job after they graduate. I will pause quickly. I'm going a little quick because I want to make sure we have some time to discuss at the end. Any questions on employer eligibility before we move on? All righty, I will keep moving. Just like with institutions, employers need to sign an employer agreement in order to participate. And again, this is the whole point of the program. The student can only be placed in an educationally beneficial position that relates to their area of study, their career objective, or the exploration of career objectives. And you'll notice again that the language is very open. So we're really leaving a lot of space for institutions to be innovative here, to have students, try something new with students and try something new with work study and see what works best for students. Students have to be paid at a comparable rate to comparable positions. So if they are working in the same position as someone who's non-learning line employment program, then they should be paid a comparable amount to that person. And also the position can't displace workers. So you can't fire your staff and replace them with students in learning aligned employment program positions. All right. And this is sort of an important point about the program. The funding that the learning aligned employment program provides is the share of funding. It depends on the type of employer. So if the student is working at a, for example, a K through 12 school, or working at a nonprofit employer, the Learning Aligned Employment Program can offer up to 90% of funds. So can provide up to 90% of funds. So you see the blue is the Learning Aligned Employment Program funds. The other 10% here, the green, would need to be covered by another source of funding. If the student's working on campus or the employer of record is the campus itself, Learning Aligned Employment Program funds can cover up to 100%. So it can fully cover the student's wages, I should mention that that doesn't include things like workers' compensation, benefits, vacation days. That does not, that's not included in what Learning Aligned Employment Program funds can cover. It's just the student's wage. Lastly, a for-profit employer can be covered up to 50%. So again, up to 50% of the student's wage can be paid by Learning Aligned Employment Program funds. The other 50% would need to come from another source. All right, I've got a couple more slides and then I will stop for questions. Just a quick plug for our website. Our website is CSAC, so that stands for California Student Aid Commission .ca as in California .gov as in government /LEAP. I wish we were LEAP, but the A and the E are transposed, so we're LEAP. It's not a pretty name, but that's our acronym. We've got a lot of resources on our website, so including an FAQ, a handbook, flyers, a slide deck. We've actually got a template for the employer agreement for your institution to use with any employers that you're working with. We've got a recorded webinar that's about an hour long. A lot of the information we've gone over in this. So if you want to watch it again, you can watch that recorded webinar. And then we'll go ahead and stop there for any questions. It looks like Catherine has a question.
Yeah. Well, are these funds, like you said about corporations, so they can be used in terms of like when students do summer internships?
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was 50-50. So 50 by LEAP and 50 by the employer.
Right. Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they're at a for-profit internship, if they're doing an internship of a nonprofit, then Learning Aligned funds can actually cover up to 90% of their wages. Yeah, so if you've got
Okay.
existing programs on your campus, this is a great way to just get those positions paid for by Learning Aligned Employment Program. But as long as they are in the student's field of interest, right? The student's career goals. Mm-hmm.
And I guess the coordination with for-profit employers all happens within the LEAP office. So they are the ones who get the employer agreements. They're the ones who coordinate payment and all of that.
So you mean the office on campus?
Yeah, in terms of if it was used for an internship with a for-profit employer.
Yeah, so this is a new program and there's actually a lot of like a variation in terms of who is handling this program on each campus. So again, I can connect you with the Learning Aligned Employment Program coordinator on your campus. Go ahead and shoot us an email if you're curious to know who that person is. But in some cases, it's someone in the financial aid office. In other cases, it's someone in the career center or the career technical education dean. We have one campus where it's someone in the welcome center. And so it really depends on the campus where that person is sort of like housed. And if it's going to be a sole position on its own or a whole department, or if it's going to just be a part of someone's position on campus. So Judy mentioned earlier, 5% of the funds that institutions receive can go toward the administrative costs of the program. And so it really, there's a lot of variation in how much money institutions have to work with in terms of hiring a specific person to do that job.
Okay.
All right, and I think we have a few minutes left, so we have about 15 minutes left to, I'll go ahead and stop sharing. I wanted to open it up just in general for everyone on this call to just discuss, you know, which programs or how would you use these programs, like which are more relevant to your K-16 collaborative, and you know, if you have any ideas about how you might implement these or questions on how you could implement them. And I used to be a teacher, so I'm not above just calling people, cold calling people to participate.
I think it's a really great opportunity, at least in our model. We have a big chunk of our community college effort, our college effort, not just community college, going towards paid internships. So we will certainly want to leverage this if possible, especially because it's a way to build sustainability into that model, which is actually part of our project as well. So I think it's really exciting. I do know at our college, they are a little overwhelmed with figuring out how to implement this, but you know, hopefully we'll have a running start to kind of catch them in, you know, future semesters so that we can kind of take advantage and at least reduce the burden on of paying for paid internships on employers.
Perfect. Thanks, Sally. And yeah, definitely reach out to us if you have questions or you need us to, you know, any of the four of us are happy to join into any of those conversations as you. I think that's a good point that you brought up, that it's a heavy lift for especially this program for campuses. So we're trying to provide resources and not stress everybody out too much with this program. Yeah, thank you. Ginny, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I heard that, well, you said that all of the UCs and all the CSUs and the vast majority of community colleges have received funding, and also that it's a 9-year grant period. So do you have an idea of the order of magnitude of students who can be impacted by this at each campus? Or does it vary? Was it split depending on our size or?
Yeah, so the funding that was sent out varies quite a bit. And the way that that was determined is through Pell recipients. And so we were required by statute to use the latest information that we could get. And so the most recent data at the time we sent out the checks was from 2019, 2020. So based on your institution's Pell recipients for the 2019-2020 year, we took the participating institutions. So again, it's basically all but 3 public colleges in California eligible. So 144 institutions were included. We looked at the Pell recipients and that percentage of the total, and then we applied that percentage to that basically $500 million and split that up amongst the institutions based on those Pell recipients. So some institutions did receive considerably more than others because they have many more Pell recipients at their institution. So it's somewhat probably related to size, but also related to the number of students who receive Pell at each institution as well. And so hopefully that since the 5% is also, you know, proportional to the amount received, hopefully those schools that do have a really heavy lift with a lot of students eligible for this program and a lot of funding for the program also received more funding for the administrative costs of the program. So trying to make it proportional, but yeah, good question.
Right, thank you so much.
Patrice, you have a question?
Not a question. I just wanted to add that I see a lot of alignment with all of the presentations that you gave today, but especially excited about the Golden State Teacher Grant Program. I think that'll be, we're really going to promote that and really think that'll be helpful in recruiting teachers here in our rural area. So very excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I wanted to mention, I wish we had, you know, several more hours because we're really interested to hear what you are all working on as well. So if you do have a program that you're, you know, let's say a Golden State teacher and you wanted to set up a meeting with that team to talk about it more fully and like how you can integrate and work with them on outreach or however you wanted to work with them, reach out to any of us and we can connect you with someone and set that up. Good question or good comment. All right, any other comments or questions?
Didn't want to get in the way of any other questions or comments, but when we had been talking to the Student Aid Commission about these programs, we thought there was a lot of overlap between what we were seeing in the proposals from the collaboratives and the funding that the state had in these various programs. So we're hopeful that by the leads and the folks in attendance today hearing about these, you'll be able to make those connections with whoever might be running the program and the various institutions that are involved in your collaborative. and possibly addressing some of the workforce challenges and needs, because that was one area where some collaborators were still kind of figuring out who was going to be involved there. So maybe there's an opportunity to align the pathways and the workforce needs that you're seeing in your region with some of these opportunities to target these students. So definitely a lot of opportunity here. We're hoping that you'll be able to help be the messengers on this. And then also, like Libby mentioned, as far as reaching out, we went back and forth on how to structure this particular meeting, because there's definitely some value in connecting with the Student Aid Commission and just kind of having one-on-ones for like what you're looking at in your particular area. So that was something that we contemplated, like, smaller groups or even regional conversations. So this is not the last conversation that has to occur on this. This is really just the introduction. So please take advantage of that opportunity to have those meetings if you think this is something that's going to be valuable for your collaborative. At the state level, I know you guys have heard this through a lot of the various webinars, but at the state level, the goal is to try to bring all of this stuff together, all of these programs together, and the K-16 collaboratives serve as a great piece of that, because you're seeing so many different aspects of this. And so trying to connect you to these different funding sources and opportunities we think it's going to be helpful in ensuring the success, and then giving you tools to help you get there too. So I just wanted to add a little bit there, but I will stop so you guys can ask more questions if you have them.
Barbara, I just want to thank you so much for setting up this meeting. This is really great to get to meet everybody. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate everybody coming today. We know your time is very valuable, but we felt that this was really important. So thanks to all of our presenters, and thanks for all of you for coming today too. Yeah, we will definitely post this. So if you have colleagues that you feel would benefit from seeing this, we'll make sure that we get this posted out as well. Yes, great question. So the late contacts, Libby, who would you like to coordinate that?
I'll put our email address in the chat, and you can email, and Judy and I will get back to you.
And then for our collaborators out there, if you are stuck and need information, please feel free to reach out to OPSC, Megan, Alex, myself. Any of us will be happy to help you with the connection points as well. If you're in a hurry and you just need to find that out, we'll track it down for you too.
Barbara, if you don't mind, I'd like to just ask a request, if that's okay at this point. One of the things that I think will be very helpful in the all in campaign is any of you that are in parts of the state where you feel as though the leaderships of the school districts need some support, please get a hold of us. For example, the Central Valley, we had an opportunity to go down and meet with 6 school districts that make up a consortium or collaborative, and they were all in the Central Valley, but they didn't include Kern County. So for those of you involved in Kern County, please reach out to us. We'd love to be able to support you there. Same with both ends of the state. The border districts are important as well. So if you think that we can be of help in dealing with the leadership of those districts there, please get back to us. Humboldt, Shasta, that area of the state is extremely critical to us as well. And there are going to be some events that will involve K-12, for example, and community colleges up in the Humboldt area. I think it's important that you, if you have that need and if you can help us gain access to the leadership of those school districts or even community colleges in those areas, please get in touch with us. This is a time when the leadership of the Student Aid Commission is very eager and interested in doing presentations or meetings, virtual or in present. So please.
All right, any other comments or questions before we finish up? All right. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks again, Barbara and team for organizing this meeting. We really appreciate it and look forward to working with everybody and hope you have a great day.